This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Hello and welcome to the Twilight Show. Thanks for joining me. The topic of today's show is teacher mentoring, and I'm joined by Professor Elena Onchevska-Ajer from Macedonia.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Welcome to the Sunday Lunch Show, everyone. I'm Graham Stanley, speaking to you live from Mexico City. On today's show, I'll be discussing teacher mentoring with my special guest, Elena Onchevska-Ajer. Elena is full professor in applied linguistics at St. Cyril and Methodius University in Skopje, North Macedonia. Her research interests revolve around language teacher education with a focus on quality teacher mentoring. Elena is also co-founder of Noticing, about .noticing.network, an AI-backed web-based facilitator of mentoring practices, an assistant to both teachers and mentors. These days, she's particularly interested in the ways in which humans can meaningfully collaborate with AI, i.e. what is known as hybrid intelligence. And I'll be talking to Elena about how she became an educator and teacher mentor, and about teacher mentoring, including hybrid mentoring with AI, after the Teachers Talk Radio news.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Meet USA Study, your one-stop platform for guiding students through their college application journey. Access up-to-date resources on universities, programs, scholarships, and application requirements, all in one place. Get easy-to-access tools, personalized timelines, expert tips, application templates, and exclusive webinars with admissions officers to help your student stand out. Visit usastudy.co.uk or call Phil at 0800 612 8271 because every student deserves the opportunity to shine with USA Study.
Hey education changemakers, ready for something special? It's Bet Show's 40th anniversary and we're throwing a free celebration just for you. Join us at London Excel from January 22nd to 24th to connect, learn and be inspired. Picture this, 300 plus speakers who truly get it, 600 cutting-edge edtech companies, and all the fresh ideas you need to make 2025 your best year yet. So why wait? Head to uk.betshow.com, grab your free ticket and come celebrate with your peers. Because this is for you. See you at Bet.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
Schools Week reports on the impact government's decision to cut the Latin Excellence programme heads say will have on the poorest pupils. According to the article, many heads believe that the scheme has helped put state school pupils on an equal competitive footing for when they go to sixth form and university, and that the decision to cut it is disappointing. The LEP was created in 2021 to broaden access to Latin under then Education Secretary Gavin Williamson, after a 2020 British Council survey found that just 2.7% of state schools offered the subject compared with 49% of private schools. The decision to axe the scheme was made clear to schools just before Christmas, with the programme set to end in March. Head teachers have said that the mid-year withdrawal is particularly challenging, as schools may not be able to continue the subject until the end of the academic year due to funding squeezes. The response from heads follows comments made in December by high-profile historians and classicists, such as Tom Holland and Mary Beard. A Department for Education spokesperson said that the independent curriculum and assessment review will make sure all pupils benefit from a curriculum that delivers excellence. The BBC covers news that England's largest education union is voting on whether to accept or reject the government's pay offer of 2.8%. If the offer is turned down, the union will debate at its conference in April whether to hold a ballot for industrial action. The NEU has called the pay recommendation extremely disappointing. A Department for Education spokesperson called the union's response an extraordinary decision. NEU General Secretary Daniel Kebede said that the unfunded proposal was an insult to the profession and that it would lead to cuts to staff or resources or both. The ballot will open on March the 1st and will run until mid-April. The School Teachers Review Body, an independent group for teachers' pay, will recommend a formal pay offer later this year. In a separate dispute, tens of thousands of students in sixth form colleges across England were disrupted by strike action in the last week, as 2,000 NEU members staged a 3-day strike over pay. The September pay rise did not include teachers at sixth form colleges, as the Department for Education says they are responsible for setting their own pay. In Northern Ireland, some schools are to provide magnetic pouches to pupils so mobile phones can be stored during the school day. BBC Northern Ireland features comments by school leaders on the plan, which it is hoped will help pupils reduce the temptation to access devices during the day. Pupils have also responded to the scheme, with many saying positive things whilst acknowledging the challenges they may face. The plan was first proposed by Education Minister Paul Givan, but initially faced criticism over cost and issues around pupils' rights. Finally, as the cold snap begins to wane and forecasters start to talk about warmer temperatures on the coming days, many news outlets have covered the impact of the decision to close schools that can have on head teachers. Many have taken to social media to explain how the decision to close, or not, has affected them, with some describing it as awful and really stressful. Schools across the UK have faced challenges in returning after the Christmas break due to the weather, with some being affected by snow and ice, some by heating issues, or, after a thaw, even flooding. One head teacher told BBC Radio that as schools have become less localised, problems have increased. We used to be able to walk to school, but now both staff and children can travel longer distances to come to school. Another head talked of the difficulty in arranging the curriculum to suit online learning for a period of time, despite experiences of this during the pandemic. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
So welcome back, everyone. I'm here with Elena. Elena, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Very well. And I would love, as I usually do, to start off with by asking you about how you became an educator. How did you get interested in education?
That was quite a few years ago, and actually it wasn't a topic, it wasn't a profession that I've had all my life. You know, like when you ask kids and they know that they want to become teachers, and many of them go on to become teachers. I've never had that passion. I was passionate about studying the English language. So at my university, at the English department, we studied the literature, we studied the language and translation. So we later on in the studies, we chose a strand to follow. And I was following both translation and language teaching, because I wasn't really sure what I was going to do, but I kind of leaned towards translation. I never even considered teaching until as part of my course, I went on a practicum and observed, and especially the moment when I taught some classes, I started off teaching young learners. And the feedback that I received from them was something that I didn't expect at all. That genuineness, that honesty, and that real appreciation for your work. I suppose that's something that you don't get in many jobs, you know. If you do another office job or something, it's unlikely that your clients will be as enthusiastic about the work you do. So that stood out for me. And the other thing that really captivated me was lesson planning, because teaching young learners, I kind of try to get to know them better every time and plan for them and think about how to surprise them better next time and what to prepare. There will be a huge success in the class. Um, and I felt that while doing lesson planning, I got so carried away that, just like Csikszentmihalyi describes it, it's a state of flow. Time stops. You don't notice when people talk to you, etc. And that was another sign. And I decided to follow this interesting experience that I was, the lovely feedback I was getting, and to go along with that. And then translation faded away as a passion, because this was by far superior. And ever since then, I've enjoyed teaching. And from teaching learners, as of recently, and maybe not so recently actually, moved on to exploring teacher learning, because it's not exactly the same. There are underlying principles that are similar, but still it's an altogether different thing, I think. But again, I'm still in the business of supporting others learning, whether it's learners or teachers. The similarities there.
Of course. Yeah, that's the thing about teaching, isn't it? What you said, it's such a rewarding profession when you get that instant feedback from the learners, especially if they're young learners, as you said. And so, what was it that interested you to move away from teaching and into teacher learning, and from away from the school and into a university setting? Was it something that happened gradually, or was it a kind of aha moment and you decided to dedicate yourself to that?
It was a very gradual process. It was never something that I consciously chose. It was just the way things were developing. So, for instance, my university job was very related to my job previously in a private language school. So I was teaching learners of all ages, from young learners to adults. And then when I got an offer to work at the university, it was again teaching learners, teaching general English, and then teaching academic English. I mean, English for academic purposes. So even at the university, there was this transition. The transition was very smooth because I was still teaching English. And then after doing my MA, and actually did my MA at the University of Leeds in the UK, I got a
Oh, right.
to do a year there. And that was a very transformative year. And this was the year when I met the person who is behind a lot of my transformation as an educator. Her name is Angie Malderes. She was my mentor on my thesis. But also I followed as many courses as I could that she was offering. One of the courses is exactly this, supporting teacher learning. Even though at the time I didn't see myself as someone supporting learning, but knowing how interesting her work is, I was interested to find out more. So I guess I subconsciously was interested, and then at the university I got a job as to support teacher learning as well. So I did language teaching and supporting pre-service learners in parallel. And at the moment, my work focuses on supporting pre-service teacher learning. So it was very
Wow.
seamless somehow, very
Amazing.
gradual.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of being at a conference in Brazil with Angie Malderes, and got to know her first then. And she's amazing, both professionally and personally, and we got on really well. I love her work, so I understand how she became an inspiration to you, definitely.
She just released her newest book, actually. I'm not sure
Oh,
whether
really?
it's called Mentoring Teachers, Supporting Learning, Well-being and Retention. It's a Routledge publication, and it's a wonderful distillation of her work slash research slash experience throughout the years. And it's one of the key books that I have on my desk. Whenever in doubt, I consult that one. It's very practical and still very informed by research and experience. I think she brings this lovely balance between years of experience and the literature, and I love that.
Definitely. So that's a nice segue into the main topic of our conversation today, which is mentoring teachers. Was it through your work at the University of Leeds and meeting Angie that you got particularly interested in mentoring?
Yeah, I got really interested in mentoring, though when I came back, I didn't immediately have a chance to have a go at mentoring. So it kind of stayed in my mind. It was somewhere in the back of my mind. And a few years later, I got the opportunity to actually work with pre-service teachers. And I got to revisit my notes from those experiences, from those modules that I attended. And I struggled a lot at the beginning because I used something that that I actually experienced as a learner, and something that was taught at mentor training seminars, etc. This ubiquitous now, I think, positive, negative, positive feedback sandwich,
Oh, yes.
also called the shit sandwich, because my learners, that they would teach, my pre-service teachers would teach, and then I would have a chat with them about the lesson that I observed. And I hated those moments with passion because I could see just how threatening they were to them, even though I always made sure I started with a little positivity about what worked, etc. They knew that there was some criticism coming, and I could see my positivity washing over them because they were looking forward to see, they were really eager to see what criticism I had. And I really struggled, but I took them for granted, and I thought this is how mentoring is done. And then I decided to reconnect with Angie and seek her advice, and then started to learn a lot more about her work, something that was not immediately visible to me back then as a university student at Leeds. And my mentoring style shifted completely because I'm not sure whether you're familiar with her 5-step mentoring protocol. It's a model that uses a coaching approach. So as a mentee, you feel like you're in a kind of therapy session. You're the one who does the talking, and the mentor gently elicits, following a 5-step protocol. And it's a completely different experience to know that the person listening is there to help you notice for yourself what you might want to change, what you might want to talk about, etc., and not seek to tell you things. Because, and it makes a lot of sense, because what people notice is not necessarily what you're primed to learn. They might notice something that's on their learning agenda or professional development agenda, but it's not on yours. It's not part of your inner syllabus.
Yeah. Just if I can interrupt there, I think it's always interesting to clarify the distinction between mentoring and coaching, and what you've just said about, the mentoring that you became involved in moved more towards coaching. So what do you think is the classic kind of distinction between those two things?
I've explored coaching as well, because I think it can be really useful to educators, to guide learners to their own discoveries. And what I'm noticing is that in coaching, the coach is not necessarily is not necessarily an expert in your area. So it can be someone who is not a teacher at all, and yet they might be able to help you notice patterns in your professional or personal life that you might not have been aware of, and therefore help you develop a development plan for yourself. The recommended coach talking time is usually 10 to 20%, which is in stark contrast to, for instance, the mentor talking time in the positive, negative, positive feedback sandwich, where the mentor talks a lot and the mentee is on the receiving end of the positivity, negativity, and positivity that the mentor has prepared. So it's a huge shift in a very different approach altogether. The mentor asks questions, tries to elicit thinking from you, and it's you who is choosing the focus of the discussion. It's you who is exploring it from different angles, because on your own you can explore it from 1, 2, 3 angles. With someone, with a dialogic partner, with a mentor, with a coach, you might be able to observe it from more angles. They might ask questions: how about this, how about that, who else was there, what was the context, etc. And that might prompt new thinking. In Angie's protocol, for instance, step 3 is about linking what you've noticed in your classroom to the literature. So that kind of informed thinking is not necessarily something that we individually consider when rushing to jump into conclusions. It's the human nature, I guess. Something happens in your classroom and you jump to the conclusion, oh, this learner must hate me or something. But if you're taken through a journey of observing many possible factors for the behavior of this or that person in the classroom, then you realize things are a bit more complex than that, and you need to explore more things, and you need to set yourself to notice other things the next way round, etc. And I see coaches doing exactly the same thing. That there is the framework within which they operate, but it's loose, and they're focused on this active listening, trying to see what kind of information you're offering and how to elicit more so that you can think in a richer way. And I think that's exactly what mentors do in Angie's world. This is what she proposes that mentors should do. And it's difficult, and that your mentor is a human, and they're bound to have opinions about things. But for instance, on the programs that I now hold for mentors, because in Macedonia we are currently developing a mentor network. It's a project funded by the Hornby Foundation.
Oh, yeah.
And we're developing a group of around 40 mentors. And it's a process, suggesting to these new mentors that they should shut up and listen is more easily said than done. Because as people, we have opinions, we have positivity and negativity that we want to share. But what Angie always suggests is this useful for the learner? Is it gonna prompt new learning, or is it gonna block learning because they're gonna get into the defense mode and trying to survive this assessment situation rather than focusing on development? I mean, some people learn through the stress that comes from assessment. They might develop, but usually people try to survive when faced with assessment. So the more developmental mentoring can be, the better, I think, for everyone included. Mentors will feel better because they'll see that they're able to help in very gentle ways, and learners learn because they're able to. They're in a safe environment where they can explore options without being overtly judged.
Yes. And the mentoring that you are doing at the moment in Macedonia, for example, is that with teachers volunteering to be mentored, or is it part of their expected professional development?
Well, it's a combination, actually. My main motivation to start with was the need to have more mentors available for my pre-service teachers, because on their practicum, they have their school-based mentors, but they can't necessarily stay after class and have half an hour and an hour chat about using Angie's protocol, for instance, to reflect about what went on in the class. It's just not feasible. They have other classes, they have lesson planning, admin work, etc. And organizing reflection for them, for my pre-service teachers, has always been difficult. So I felt I needed people who are willing to support my pre-service teachers by being their mentors. And this is how we advertise the project. Teachers will be helping pre-service teachers to develop their reflective skills by mentoring them. But also there is a requirement in schools across the country for people to mentor new teachers in their schools. It's a I'm not sure what to think about that process for the time being. I think it's a very administrative process, and they're looking to choose one mentor per school, which doesn't make enough sense for me because, you know,
That's too much workload for each mentor, isn't it?
That, but also the fact that they can't necessarily help new teachers with the subjects they teach. For instance, a maths teacher mentoring an English language teacher, they won't be able to help much with regard to the subject, with regard to the content, the subject they teach. So in an ideal situation, mentors would be experts in the area. So they would be colleagues teaching the same subject, and not just coaches, taking them through things. I think it's an added benefit for people to be experts in the.
So is that the best sort of scenario, to have a teacher who is developing maybe at the beginning of their career to be mentored by a more experienced teacher who is teaching the same or something similar, same age group, etc., or has experience teaching that age group? Would be the perfect situation, would it be, for the mentor-mentee relationship?
I guess so. And another important factor is that they get on, that they develop
Of
trust.
course.
Because
Of
if you
course.
don't trust your mentor, it's difficult to open up. It's difficult to be honest about things. You're likely to just go through the motions without doing much learning.
So how does a mentor develop trust with a mentee? Is there a kind of are there kind of guidelines for that, or is it about just getting to know them and spending time and showing that they're there to help, or is it something more than that?
Angie Maldares talks about 5 mentor roles, and I think all of them are conducive to developing trust. She talks about modeling, but not necessarily modeling teaching. She talks about modeling professionalism instead, for the mentee to notice that their mentor is interested in the work they do, attends conferences, seeks to develop, is engaged in their profession rather than just, again, going through the motions. Then she talks about the role of the support role. So the mentor being there for the mentee to listen to them, to offer support, to offer reassurance, especially at the beginning when teaching can easily go wrong. And it's a vulnerable profession. It is very emotion-laden profession. So the mentees really need need a space where it's safe to vent. So providing that as part of the support role. Then there's the sponsor role, the willingness to connect mentees with professionals that they might benefit from, or sources, etc. Any kind of, using their own contacts and knowledge to link mentees with appropriate sources of knowledge or expertise, etc. So what did I mention so far? Model, sponsor, support. A culturator is another one. This refers to helping the mentor learn about the professional culture in the school, getting to, introducing them to how things work at the school, etc. Introducing them to everyone else, etc., which is another form of being there for them. And finally, the educator role. And this is, the role of supporting reflection, what we've been talking so far, using the protocol to support systematic informed reflection. So I believe that it is through all these roles that mentees can get signals that the mentor cares, that the mentor is there for them, to support them in all these roles, in all these senses. When they see that the mentor has time for them, is available for them, doesn't rush through their meetings, genuinely cares, I suppose these are the foundations for developing trust. I guess if you care, it's bound to get noticed by
Yeah.
person
People
that the
can
care
tell.
is intended for. Yeah, exactly. So whichever way you manifest your care, if you care, it's visible. It's visible to my 3-year-old. I mean, she knows
Yeah.
which teachers care for her
Yeah.
in the
Oh,
nursery and
yeah.
which don't, let alone grown
It's
up.
it's one of the fundamental things about teaching, isn't it?
Mm,
Or teacher education. If you're in a room with a number of people, even online, um, the people you're with can tell if you're interested in what you're
mm,
teaching or
mm, mm.
teacher training, for example, and if you know something, and if you really are interested not only in the subject but interested in the people in the room actually learning, it comes across.
Absolutely. And this is a common discussion that I have with my pre-service teachers. You know, they come to me with questions like, should I stand like this? Should I cross my arms? Should I do this? Should I not do this? I think that we really, you know, if they're if they care, it's going to be noticed. And even
Yeah.
if they have their arms crossed, which might mean, you know, reservation, etc. I have my arms crossed many times in situations when I'm concentrating and seeking to learn, etc., about my
Yeah.
students. So I'm not sure that body language can be so standardized, you know, in terms of this
Hmm.
gesture means this other gesture means this. I think that we are so different and we use body language in different ways. Yeah, waving my hands. I'm waving my hands all the time, and I don't think that toning down on my body language will improve my student learning. I think it's important for people to be genuine in what they do, and
Yeah.
mentors are no exception.
Yeah. I completely agree with you. So this is all very interesting. And what do you think are the key factors if someone wants to become a mentor? Is the first step to be mentored, for example, do you think?
Ideally,
Yeah.
um, because even after, so I started mentoring just by consulting with Angie, reading about her work, reading research on the topic, etc. But it's only after I was mentored, when I experientially learned about what it means to be mentored, that I feel I'm free to make bolder statements and be more certain about what I'm saying, because it comes from experience. And I noticed this in the mentors in this network that I'm building in Macedonia. It's called Macedonian Mentoring Network, MMM. Sorry, MMN in English. In Macedonian, it's 3M, 3Ms. So even on that project, what I noticed was that, you know, I would model mentoring with another participant in front of the rest of the group, for instance, and they would see us going through the 5 steps and me trying to keep as quiet as possible and trying to ask the right questions, whatever right means. It's difficult and you fail all the time and you learn all the time, and that's another good thing about mentoring and teaching. I guess you never stop learning, really. There's so
Yeah.
much to, you know, so many, there's so much scope for development. Um, and I suppose that was helpful for my mentors to see a mentoring session role played. But then, in the meantime, we were working on an AI-backed app. It's called Noticing. We just won the Elton's Award for innovative use of technology. We're very happy.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. And so we were developing this app to support this very time-consuming task of supporting reflection, because a reflective conversation can take half an hour up to an hour sometimes, and busy mentors, especially when mentoring multiple mentees, might struggle to find that time. And I asked the mentors in my group to actually have a go as mentees, to have an individual go at being mentored using the app. They came back with wonderfully positive feedback, because it was one thing to see someone doing it, doing the mentoring in front of them, role playing it. And it was an altogether different thing to actually experience it as a mentee. In our case, the app is trained to follow Angie's 5-step mentoring protocol. And as mentees, they choose a critical incident, something that stood out for them in the class, and then they reflect about that incident through the step protocol.
Sorry for interrupting. This is fascinating, Elena. How do the mentees tell the app? Do they have to provide a chat text input so that the app understands the situation?
They can either type, or there is also a text-to-speech functionality. Speech-to-text functionality, so you can talk to it. Yeah. You can choose whichever modality you prefer, typing or speaking. And it was a challenge to train a generative model, a model that is designed to do the thinking for you, to solve your problems, to give you ready-made solutions, to actually calm it down and get it to focus on generating thinking prompts rather than generating solutions. So at the end, we ended up using 7 different AIs to keep each other in check, because it was really difficult to get it to shut up. It just wants to generate. It wants to please you. It wants to solve the problems for you. And we didn't want that. We want the teachers to be in the driver's seat, leading the conversation, and being being in the center of their mentoring conversation.
So the AI is programmed to kind of generate questions, and the right questions to help the teacher, to lead the teacher to their own solutions based on their context. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the teachers the mentors love this, because they could see that they were inspired about how the AI is asking questions, that they were inspired to analyze the ways in which it asks questions, how it frames things. It's ultra polite, so it's also another thing that caught their
So it can be good training for trainee mentors as well.
I used it in that capacity, just to test it with colleagues without huge expectations from it. But the mentors came back wonderfully happy about all the role modeling, really, that it gave them. And they felt better prepared for the challenge of facilitating that kind of non-judgmental mentoring experience for their mentees. I think they were confident, after having the experience.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Meet USA Study, your one-stop platform for guiding students through their college application journey. Access up-to-date resources on universities, programs, scholarships, and application requirements, all in one place. Get easy-to-access tools, personalized timelines, expert tips, application templates, and exclusive webinars with admissions officers to help your student stand out. Visit usastudy.co.uk or call Phil at 0800 612 8271, because every student deserves the opportunity to shine with USA Study.
Hey education changemakers, ready for something special? It's Bet Show's 40th anniversary and we're throwing a free celebration just for you. Join us at London Excel from January 22nd to 24th to connect, learn and be inspired. Picture this, 300 plus speakers who truly get it, 600 cutting-edge edtech companies and all the fresh ideas you need to make 2025 your best year yet. So why wait? Head to uk.betshow.com, grab your free ticket and come celebrate with your peers. Because this is for you. See you at Bet.
And were any of the mentors worried that they might be replaced by the app or the AI?
Not
It's a
really.
natural kind of fear that everyone has at the moment, I think, isn't it? That
Mm,
people's jobs are going to
Well,
be taken over by
mm,
AI.
mm. Um, we don't see it as such. We don't seek to replace mentors because, as I said, being a mentor is a very complex role.
Mhm.
It's not just the educator role. Perhaps we are trying to use AI in the educator role because it's one of the more time-consuming roles of the mentor. We hope that if mentors can, from time to time, delegate some of these reflection sessions that are typically time consuming to the AI and treat it as like an extended arm of sorts, as an assistant of theirs,
Yeah,
to hold the discussions for them and to report back about what was decided in each conversation, like a report, maintaining confidentiality. I think that could be helpful, and it means that the teachers can use such apps as little as often or not as they see fit. Because if you're mentoring just one mentee and you want to engage in these reflective conversations, you have enough time, etc., it's great. But if you have multiple mentees and a busy teaching schedule and you need to mentor on top, it might be overwhelming. Some of the mentors on my program struggled to mentor one mentee in one semester, for instance. They said, we have so many competing demands, it's really difficult. So I'm hoping that apps like this can potentially create more headspace for these busy mentors so they can fulfill their other roles, like acculturation or role modeling, modeling, or support, etc. Especially support. This is something that a machine
yeah,
can try to do, but I'm not sure that it
but not
comes
very
across as
effectively.
genuine as coming from a human. What I'm saying is that there are so many jobs a mentor needs to do that a bit of help with some of them, with the more predictable ones, shall we say,
Yeah,
could be welcome.
yeah. So it's a case of, I think a lot of people who are starting to use AI in education have come to that understanding, and that AI
Mhm.
can be something that can save time, that if it's used critically for being careful to choose what you use it for, then it can be a real time saver. It can when it's used to assist
Mhm.
things that a teacher or a teacher educator or mentor in your case does, then that's where there's a real value in it, isn't there?
Absolutely. I'm a bit wary about using AI for the jobs that are more central to teaching. For example, lesson planning. I still find lesson planning very immersive, like I found at the beginning of my career, and this is one of the things that got me teaching in the end.
Yeah,
Um, and I'm not sure I want to give some of that flow to a machine because I'm enjoying it. That's why I'm an educator. It's like having a plant and wanting someone else to water it for you. I enjoy the watering because I enjoy seeing it grow. But for other tasks that are perhaps more stepped, predictable, where you don't need to be as creative or critical, etc. Why not? Provided that you are the person who is in the driver's seat rather than allowing the
yeah,
AI to take over.
yeah.
Because in that sense, we become the AI's assistant. I'm not sure whether you've
Yes.
experienced some of
The
these
role
lesson planning.
reverses.
Yeah, there are many lesson planning apps where they actually ask you to fill in a few boxes. For instance, describe your learners, age, context, topic you want to teach, etc. And then the AI goes away and develops your lesson plan, or 80% of your lesson plan, as they seem to suggest. I believe that it's dangerous for teachers. I mean, they become like, I don't know, a secretary giving the AI basic
Yeah,
information for the class, therefore assisting the AI to develop their own lesson plan, which I think is
yeah.
dangerous territory.
Yes, I think you're right. I think the danger is as well is with such a shortage of teachers in many parts of the world, there'll be a temptation, I think,
Mm,
as this develops, for schools, uh, districts, countries to actually employ people who are perhaps not so much teachers or experts in subjects, and they rely upon the AI to generate the content, and they're just in the classroom delivering content, as the horrible phrase is. So there's a potential future that I would hate to see happen.
And yeah, I suppose it's threatening everyone's agency. Imagine those poor people who have to
Yeah.
deliver someone else's classes where they haven't had the chance to,
Yeah.
have any
And then
personal input. Or the students being taught such classes by people who are unhappy in their jobs.
yeah.
It's a dystopic scenario, I
Yes.
think.
Yeah. And then there's always that nightmare scenario, which I fear is potentially happening at the moment, where a teacher will, when it comes to assessment, where a teacher will get the AI to generate the assessment and the rubric, the criteria for marking, will give the assessment to the students. The students will use an AI to generate an answer, and the teacher will use the rubric and the AI to mark the students' work. So you potentially have a cycle where no human has had much involvement in the assessment process.
Which means everyone is wasting their time, really.
Nobody's learning.
Teachers are not learning about their learners, because assessment is a way to learn about how they're getting on.
Exactly.
Learners are not learning, so I guess everyone is just pretending to. I'm not sure what.
Going through the motions
Yeah, going
of
through the
teaching and
motions
learning without getting
and
any
wasting
benefit.
time. Yeah, it's a waste
Waste
of
of time,
time,
yeah.
and a waste of talent, and waste of human creativity, a waste on all fronts. It's another, as you say, nightmare scenario.
Yeah.
I hope we're not gonna see much of.
Yeah, me too. That's great. So to pull this back to mentoring again, then, Elena, if there are teachers out there who think, I would love to have a mentor, I'd love to be part of a mentorship program, but I don't have the opportunity. How would they get started, either within their school or in another way? How can teachers out there who don't have access to a mentor start things off, get things going?
Mm. First of all, I think that every teacher, educator, would benefit from having a mentor, regardless of
Yeah.
the career stage. This is what the project that I mentioned, the Macedonian Mentoring Network, is telling me. Many teachers noticed this. Some were more experienced and still enjoyed both the mentor and mentee role, because they swapped from time to time to experience both. So I warmly recommend mentoring or being mentored as a form of professional development. If people don't have access to good quality mentoring, and this is a common situation, I guess, globally, even though things are looking much better in England, I have to say, I can notice a lot more vibrant development on the mentoring front. But in many countries, mentors are either not available, or if they're available, the likelihood are that they engage in these directive assessment-like practices, judgmental practices. Angie Malderes, in a paper together with Andrew Hobson, calls them judge mentors. Mentors who engage in judgments, and therefore, instead of prompting learning, they stifle it, really. And not only learning, people's well-being as well. For many teachers, this is a reason, not supportive mentor is a reason that they don't continue in the profession. So when good quality mentoring is scarce, what I would do is get hold of an interested colleague, someone like-minded who is eager to develop, that I keep meeting at conferences, or someone that shows signs of real engagement in their profession, and get hold of reliable resource. I would get hold of Angie's book, for instance, which has very practical suggestions about how to develop, how mentors can develop in each role, and take it from there. Start by peer mentoring, trying out both roles, and this kind of exercise is bound to have positive effects because you'll be looking at your own and hopefully someone else's teaching practice from multiple angles, considering interesting options, angles that you might not have come up with on your own. It's eye-opening. I suppose it's the dialogic and non-judgmental component that are key. As long as there is someone else that you trust, development can be, fueled very easily through a little bit of support. I have to say that our mentoring network, even though we've just started developing it, it's been a year since we started. We're very eager to connect to professionals out there in the world. So if anyone is interested, feel free to get in touch. Perhaps some of our mentors can be those first mentors for any interested colleagues. We think that mentoring is a very valid and very powerful form of professional development, and I wish it to anyone out there. Please get in touch if we can help, or find an interesting colleague that you think that you can be open with, and it's fantastic.
And get started.
The affordances are amazing.
Yeah, wonderful. And the role of observation, I'm getting that if you're mentoring teachers, then one of the first things a mentor should do is actually observe the teacher teaching. Is that right?
Usually this is how things work. But Angie, again, sorry, I go on about Angie, but I love her work. It informs everything I do. Angie is very much against it because she believes that it might undermine relationships and trust. So she believes that there is a lot of value to be had just from teachers discussing something, a critical incident, something that stood out for them, with a person who wasn't in the class at all. And actually, when I tried out being mentored to experience it as a process, my mentor was never in my classroom, yet he did not stifle any development. Quite the opposite, when you talk about something that happened to someone who was there, there is an air of artificiality because this person was there as well. They saw things in their way. When you have the 5-step conversation with someone who wasn't there, then there is a genuine reason for this conversation to be had. You're sharing with a colleague something that stood out for you in a way you would in the staff room, at home with your partner. Yeah, sometimes I think that's a kind of mentoring as well, if they're willing to listen. But there is genuine communication going on. The mentor being present in the classroom can be damaging if the relationship is not right. Obviously, with someone you trust a lot, there's no problem at all, but if this mentor is someone that you're still not sure about, them being present can
be damaging,
can delay relationship development or undermine this process of developing relationships.
That's interesting. I think I can see why that's the case, but on the other hand, I think if one of the things I've definitely benefited from having someone observe my classes and point out things that I didn't notice or didn't see, because when you're actually in the thick of teaching, there's so much going on in a classroom. You've got your head on what am I going to teach, what's coming next, trying to keep the energy levels of the young learners right, trying to think about different activities, trying to keep the behavior of the students in check, etc. And there are things that you miss. So I do agree. I understand why especially if you don't, if it's a new relationship with a mentor, then you might not want to do that.
Mm.
But I do see the
Um,
value of being observed.
mm,
I know it's threatening to a lot of teachers, but usually it's because of the culture of observation.
mm,
Observers are only there to kind of to evaluate teaching
mm,
or teachers
mm,
normally, and that's probably where this when observation becomes a kind of culture of assessment or evaluation
mm,
of the teacher or teaching, then
mm,
that's
mm.
probably where it would be difficult for a mentor to do it, I suppose.
But even if they're not there for assessment purposes, we know that people are subjective. They have
Yeah,
judgment by default, you know. And there's always the element of, oh, what will my colleague think about me? Did I embarrass myself, etc. So that there is
yeah,
added pressure, I guess,
right.
to someone
Yeah.
being in the room. And I think when it comes to teaching, what I find very valuable is the feedback I get from the learners. So
Hmm.
for instance, and this is another technique that I learned off Angie, this is what we did at Leeds. At the end of each session, we shared our reactions, she calls them. So our comments on the lesson, what worked for us, what didn't, how we felt about things, what would like to have, what we would like to have more or less of, etc. going forward. And people are given very small slips of paper that, you know, this can be adjusted to all sorts of ages. You know, young learners can use can use emoticons or, you know, but it's a space for them to vent out. And it is this feedback that I think is a lot more valuable to a teacher than, say, a colleague's, because what your colleague notices might get completely unnoticed by the learners, and they might notice something completely different that is
Yeah,
directly related to how they perceive you and your teaching, you know. And I think that matters more because it's about their learning,
yeah,
not about
yeah.
um, whoever colleague comes in the classroom with their own baggage, with
True.
their own expectations, etc.
Very true.
I think we should be more mindful of our learners' feedback than our colleagues.
Yeah. No, you're convincing me. I'm changing my mind.
You don't
With
have to. I'm just,
no, but
I'm just
I've never
sharing
kind
where
of
I've come.
I've not thought about that before, but I can see there are benefits of actually keeping the observation out of the mentoring process that I hadn't really thought about before.
Mm, mm,
And I understand that. But also, I'm imagining it's kind of like the teacher who is being mentored, um, they're the one who will benefit from it. And they're even if there are things that they don't notice,
mm,
or they may not want, or things that they're doing in the classroom with their learners that they might not know and but are not of a concern at the
mm,
stage of development they're at. Whereas if the mentee is driving the conversation, if you like, or
mm.
driving the kind of development, if they want to know something, then getting feedback from the learners is probably more useful as well.
Absolutely. And I think that we learn, you know, what we notice is a sign of what we are primed to learn. For instance, we
Hmm.
notice something that that might be a suggestion that this is something that we want to know more about, you know, this is the direction that we want to develop in.
Yeah.
And it's very bottom up in that sense, you know, because I really dislike the opposite top down approaches where an institution comes in and says you'll get training in terms of this and that,
Yeah.
you know, that you don't
Yeah.
necessarily care about.
Agreed.
This is a really bottom up agenda.
So, Elena, to go back to a term you've used a lot in our conversation, noticing, um, and the idea of noticing being fundamental for
Mm,
teacher reflection, for change in practice, etc., and as
mm,
part of the mentoring process. How would you suggest a teacher become more aware of what's going on? And are there things that a teacher can do so that they are able to notice better?
mm. One thing that's helped me a lot is asking my learners about their reactions. They help me notice things that I might not be consciously aware of. they sometimes bring up things that I would never have thought of, that I would consider complete triviality, but they matter to them, So that kind of information sets me sets me up for noticing more next time. They give me ideas about what to notice more in terms of what matters to them. Another thing that's helped me notice more is just being mentored, having mentoring discussions, because it's you notice a finite amount of things, and then your mentor might ask you about, how about this? Have you thought about this? Who else was in the context? How did the rest of the class react to this critical incident, etc. And that kind of questions might help you realize something that you've noticed but you weren't necessarily aware of. It kind of brings to consciousness things that you've registered but haven't really noticed on a conscious level. So I think that mentoring is really valuable in that sense, because the presence of someone else, this dialogy component to mentoring, really helps you, get more ideas, notice more things, or get ideas about what to notice more of next as well. It's enriching in that way, because it's interesting. Before I introduced one-to-one mentoring with my students, they only reflected on a piece of paper. They had prompts and they reflected on their own individually. And many of them disliked the experience. It's a very, very solitary experience. You're on your own with your ideas. I guess putting things down on paper can generate more, but how many more? The presence of someone else in the conversation is a source of wonderful richness, I found, in terms of places to look at, ideas to consider, etc. So it's all very enriching. So yeah, chatting to my students and chatting to colleagues, I guess, helps me notice a lot more.
Yeah.
Or helps me, reminds me of how much more there is to notice out there, and how limited
Of
our
course.
perception.
Wonderful. And Elena, moving now towards moving towards the end of our conversation together. It's been fascinating to talk to you, but what kind of things does the future hold? What kind of projects have you got on the go? There is, of course, the community, the mentoring community that you mentioned. How do you feel that is going to expand in the next year or so? And are there any other kind of things related to mentoring or the app you were talking about before that you're planning on developing?
Well, actually, our next plans are to consolidate the group and help it grow. And we want to accelerate this, build a strong community so that we are able to help more teachers get interested in mentoring. And what I found, actually, we talked about experienced and less experienced teachers acting as mentors. I found that some of my recently graduated students who've become mentors, who've joined the mentoring community as being mentees, will very soon be ready to mentor others, because I can see how reflection is becoming their second nature. It is very much like a skill. I sometimes see reflection as a kind of workout. The more you do it, the more natural you become at it. And I can see many young colleagues being ready to support new teachers, or not so new teachers, even practicing teachers. I don't see the experience thing as being a blocker. And one way to grow the community, we feel, is the use of the noticing app, because so far one mentor was able to mentor another person. Hopefully with the app, they'll be able to mentor 3-4 at a time, hopefully. So the outreach will be a lot bigger, and we hope to reach a lot more teachers in the coming year using the app as support for mentors, so that they can use the same time that they have, but serving more teachers at the same time. This hasn't been done so far. I feel that we're doing something new here, and it's going to be really exciting to see how this whole project unfolds. But we're hopeful. The initial feedback is very positive, very encouraging. I'll let you know how we develop going forward. It's going to be interesting for me as well to observe.
Wonderful.
It's going to be a real kind of collaboration between human and the machine, you know. And interestingly, this is something that's been recently theorized in the literature. That they call it hybrid intelligence. So human plus AI resulting in hybrid intelligence. And I think that's the way forward for people to stay in the driver's seat and use the machines to help them rather than replace them.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think now is the moment as well, isn't it? To actually, if we're going to use AI, for example, we are in a position at the moment to decide how it gets used, for what reasons, etc. If we don't take control, if you like, of that, if we let things just happen and develop, then we could end up being in for a future that we don't particularly agree with.
Absolutely. We have to be in control. We have to be responsible for our own agency in the profession. And I think as long as we feel alive in the profession, using the machines to support us, we're on the right track. The moment we feel that we're getting a bit lazy and passive, that's the moment to take stock and see where we're going. At the moment, I feel that we are as agentic as can be, and we'll see what happens in terms of the outcomes of this hybrid intelligence adventure.
Yeah, all very interesting. I'll have to look into that a bit more. I'm particularly interested in it. So thank you very much, Elena, for joining me today. I've really enjoyed talking to you about mentoring and all the other things we've talked about. It's been a great pleasure. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and thank you so much for showing interest for mentoring. Not very common these days. Thank you so much.
I'm sure that will change.
Hopefully. Thank you.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Meet USA Study, your one-stop platform for guiding students through their college application journey. Access up-to-date resources on universities, programs, scholarships, and application requirements, all in one place. Get easy-to-access tools, personalised timelines, expert tips, application templates, and exclusive webinars with admissions officers to help your student stand out. Visit usastudy.co.uk or call Phil at 0800 612 8271 because every student deserves the opportunity to shine with USA Study.
Hey education changemakers, ready for something special? It's Bet Show's 40th anniversary and we're throwing a free celebration just for you. Join us at London Excel from January 22nd to 24th to connect, learn and be inspired. Picture this, 300 plus speakers who truly get it, 600 cutting-edge edtech companies and all the fresh ideas you need to make 2025 your best year yet. So why wait? Head to uk.betshow.com, grab your free ticket and come celebrate with your peers. Because this is for you. See you at Bet.
Thanks very much to Elena for that interesting conversation. I thought it might be useful now to play a clip from a previous show when I spoke to my guest then, Tatiana from Belgrade, about coaching, especially as the difference between mentoring and coaching came up during the conversation with Elena. And here's what during the conversation with Elena, but I spoke about this with Tatiana. And here's what Tatiana said. And the other thing I wanted to ask you about was the difference between coaching and mentoring. Because that's the two things that are often confused, aren't they?
That's a great question. And this is
the confusion very often arises when it comes to the leadership and leadership arena. Mentoring is pretty direct and directive. For example, if you have somebody who is joining the team, you need to mentor that person. They need to have a very straightforward guidelines, instructions, because if they are a newcomer, regardless of their age, they really need to be guided through the process. So this is mentoring. It's really about giving clear instructions to the person so they can perform to their best. Coaching is probably for people, for employees who are more mature, so to say. For example, if somebody has been in a company for 2 to 3 years and they already have the foundational knowledge, they know the procedures, they know the processes, then it is up to a supervisor or employer to use the coaching as their leadership style. And this is about asking questions. And I work with a lot of people really across the globe, and I can still see this resistance and confusion. And this is something that I saw with my team, because very often, due to the school system, education systems in general, we are used to be mentored. We are used to be instructed. We are used to be guided instead of being asked about our opinion. And coaching is really about getting the best out of people, out of teams, using their capacities, using their creativity, using their knowledge. And once you introduce that style, whether with your children, with your students, with the people you manage, the needle shifts dramatically, and people are usually puzzled. They're surprised because they do not expect that much to be asked. But once when you allow people to talk and to express their ideas, their views, you can see the magic happening. Because when you have a team, or even team of 2 people, it's absolutely the 2 heads are better than one, and then you can have a really productive, interactive, fruitful conversation and discussion, which will definitely yield better ideas, better results. So it's up to the coach or a manager who is using coaching skills to know how to ask these powerful questions so that people can do their best and give the most of themselves.
Okay, that's a very good distinction between mentoring and coaching. I like it. So, mentoring is very much more of a narrow focus based on the maybe the job that someone is doing, but also it's about empowering them to have the skills to do that job. And coaching is far more about the asking questions and investigating how the person can be better, but in a much wider focus. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. And it takes time to move from mentoring to coaching, or to move from being a mentee to being a coachee. It really takes life experience and work experience. I'm just thinking, if maybe 20 years ago someone had asked me a powerful question, I probably wouldn't have been able to give like the best possible answer. At this time, I expect my colleagues, my supervisors, whomever I'm interacting with, to ask questions, because once you have the miles walked and once you have the experience, you are kind of like eager to share. And I find when I apply coaching, we always win as a team. Everybody feels involved, everybody feels appreciated. And it's just like knowledge sharing and experience sharing, and we are always happier and more productive. And the team spirit is much better, and the team energy shares. And this is what I see as the best possible tool and approach if somebody wants to see their team, their community growing, always ask the person on the other side of the table what would they want, what would be their view, or maybe shift them. This is a powerful coaching technique. Very often we are stuck in the present and we cannot see anything else. And there is a very gentle technique to move that person and say, okay, I acknowledge that this is the way it is at the moment. It's like a pretty gloomy situation. But maybe in 5 years, what would be your desired scenario? What would be your dream life, dream job, like 5 years from now? And that really liberates a person to unleash their imagination. Because, when we were kids, our imagination was wild. Everything was possible. And then, of course, when you enter some systems, there are some rules, there are some procedures, there are some limitations, and there are frameworks or boxes where we kind of like live in or move in. And we need to remember to use our imagination. And this is where you would see a radical shift when people start talking, what would they like something to be in like 5 years' time? And when they stop, then they usually understand that a number of these things are actually very implementable. If they cannot see that, then a coach would gently ask, okay, out of all these beautiful things that you painted for us, what is at the moment possible? And there is always something that is possible. And coaching is very much about commitment and doing things. It's not psychotherapy. Psychotherapy is often confused with coaching, just like mentoring or motivational speaking. A little bit of everything for sure, but coaching is absolutely future oriented. It's completely implementation and execution oriented. So when I'm working with my clients or my colleagues, from session to session, the first question that I would ask at the beginning of each new session is like, what you have done since the last time, because it is about moving along the way. And it's about acting quickly. So we usually end all the sessions by asking, what is the first step that you're going to do today to get closer to your goal?
So, as you can see, different people have different ideas about mentoring and coaching and the differences. It's definitely not clear cut. And after speaking to Elena, I find it interesting how the kind of mentoring she was talking about seems to combine elements of what others think, such as Tatiana, being more related to coaching. And I think this makes sense when mentoring teachers, whereas Tatiana, I think, was speaking about mentoring and coaching in more general terms, not specifically about mentoring teachers. It's all very interesting. And the conversation I had with Tatiana took place back in May. And if you want to listen to the whole show, you can go to Teachers Talk Radio website, the ttr.org, select the Listen Back tab and search on the keywords coaching or Tatiana, and you'll find that the link to the recording of that show. If you search for coaching, you'll also find a number of other shows hosted by other Teachers Talk Radio hosts on the same subject. And let me have a look now at what you will find. If you look for coaching, you'll find something about direct instruction and instructional coaching, a show by Jamie. You'll find Coaching Cultures and Education with Sabrina, and then Adam's show about instructional coaching back in January last year. July last year. Then Wellbeing, Leadership and Coaching with Chris Sebald. And then Tatiana's show comes up. There are others. Quality Coaching and Mentoring looks like a really interesting one, which I haven't listened to, which I think I'll go back and listen to. Nazia and Krupa talking to Lizana Oberholzer. about research into mentoring and coaching, and more. And again, if you search on mentoring, you get fewer shows, which is quite interesting. There's the quality coaching and mentoring show that Nazia and Krupa did, and Sabrina's coaching and mentoring show. And then there's one about burnout that involves it. And then I've just discovered another show that I did back in 2023, which was featured Claire Vaughan, who mentors teachers in Patagonia, Argentina. About these are Welsh teachers, and I'd forgotten that the focus of that was really about her work mentoring teachers. So all really interesting. So I think I brought this up because it's good to remember that if you're interested in a subject in particular, then you can search the Teachers Talk Radio archives and you'll find an episode about the subject, most likely, that you're interested in to listen back to. Go ahead and try it out. You'll be surprised. So go to ttr.org, go to listen back and search in whatever subject you're interested in, and I think you'll be surprised at the kind of conversations that you'll have that can help you with your professional development. Okay, so before we end, I'd like to talk a little bit about my own experience with mentoring. And I have, over the years, been involved to a certain extent. One of the first things that happened to me was I was involved in a European Union project called A Planet. And that was all about helping teachers use professional learning networks, that's the PLN of the A Planet, especially when it comes to using technology. So this was quite some time ago when Web 2 technology was starting to become interesting for teachers to become familiar with, and part of the problem was that a lot of teachers were not using technology or were a bit unfamiliar or not sure about how to approach using technology to build their own networks. And that's why this project was very useful. It was a really interesting project back in the day that I had the pleasure of collaborating with a number of different people from a number of different European countries about, and really it's something that I remember very fondly. And as part of that project, I actually produced a mentoring guide to help teachers and mentors come together. So the idea was for us to match mentors with teachers, volunteers someone who knew about technology, for example, would be able to mentor someone who didn't know about these tools and help them. And it was really, really successful. I think we had I can't remember exactly how many teachers and mentors we had that we needed to match, and that ended up coming together and helping each other with these PLNs. But it certainly helped a lot of teachers, and so it felt like a very rewarding project to be involved in. But I'm looking now at this mentoring guide that I said was maybe 12 years ago or maybe longer even, and what I wrote about mentoring there from the research that I did there. And here it definitely looks like mentoring has changed a lot, and coaching has changed a lot since then. It's definitely moved off in different directions. This is what is written in the Mentor's Guide for A Planet about mentoring versus coaching. How does mentoring differ from coaching? There are overlaps, of course. Stoddard, back in 1953, noted that coaching was skills-driven, short-term, and focused on behavior, while mentoring is relationship-oriented and has a long-term scope and is holistic, which I think a lot of coaches and mentors would probably disagree with at the moment. So that's kind of interesting. And what do mentors do? And again, Angie Malderis comes up here in a book that she wrote with someone called Bodowski in 1999. And the functions of mentoring back then were as follows: being a model to demonstrate and inspire, acting as a acculturator, to help mentees get used to a particular professional culture, which is definitely what we wanted to do with the project. Being a sponsor, i.e. to introduce mentees to the right people, offering support to act as a sounding board, and educating to help mentees achieve professional learning objectives. And they were all very relevant to what the work that we were doing with technology and personal learning networks. And then there's another section which was all about being a good mentor, which Zachary in 2009 stresses that good mentoring depends on effective learning, which occurs when there is a mixture of acquiring knowledge, applying it through practice, and critically reflecting on the process. So, lots of interesting things there. I summed up in this guide that good mentoring depends on a reciprocal learning relationship, and I'll come to that in a minute. In my experience with the last experience I had with mentoring, it involves establishing rapport with mentees rapidly, is founded on mutually defined goals, requires skill in noticing, which came up in my talk with Elena, and interpreting teaching and learning opportunities, encourages autonomous learning and self-evaluation, and is able to link theory and practice in personally significant ways. A good mentor is also someone who's able to make people feel good about themselves, and good mentoring usually starts with the mentor finding out more about the mentee's existing knowledge, experience, and belief. And that, again, is from Malderis and Bodowski in 1999. So my last experience of being a mentor, which was not from a teaching perspective, but from a colleague perspective. So a colleague of mine that I work with in the Americas contacted me and said he was interested in me being a mentor for him for his own professional development. He had identified certain aspects of my work that he wanted to know more about. And he thought it could help if we had a conversation together. So he basically set an agenda where we would talk for, I think it was 30 to 45 minutes a week for about 6 weeks. There were different aspects he identified that he would like to learn from me about, and we just met. One of the things that really helped is that we got on really well before knowing each other, before doing this mentorship thing. So I knew him, we respected each other, we had worked together quite a lot. So that was a really good basis for this conversation. And it was a interesting experience, both from his point of view, as he said, and from my point of view. And I think I learned as much as he did, I think, from it. And the reason for that was because very rarely in our working lives do we actually get the opportunity to sit down and talk to someone and have these reflective conversations that are extended. And this is one of the main reasons why I am involved with Teachers Talk Radio, because I get to contact interesting people and have conversations about what they know related to education. And I think it's very important for my own professional development. And I hope that those of you who have listened to these conversations on Teachers Talk Radio feel the same thing. And this mentoring mentee experience ended up being a conversation where we would reflect on things that he wanted to talk about. So he set the agenda, he set the questions, and he would ask me about a particular thing, but then we'd often go off in tangents related to work, and he would also bring up certain aspects of his work where he needed kind of advice for, or that he wanted some kind of feedback on what he should do, or what he'd done, and what he could have done differently, etc. And I ended up talking to him about aspects that related to this from my own professional life. It was in confidence, so we both knew that we could speak very openly. We shouldn't feel worried about revealing things that perhaps we could have done better in the past, or things that we felt maybe were mistakes that we'd made. And I think that was one of the other reasons why it was a very interesting experience for me. So it's something that I really do recommend that you become involved in mentorship. And I hope today's conversation with Elena shows that this is something that you feel that would be really interesting for you to be involved in. And that's it, really. I think that sort of brings us to the end of today's Sunday Lunch Show. Many thanks to Elena again for sharing her experience and knowledge about teacher mentoring today, and all of you who joined us live. And that's it from me. There are Teachers Talk radio shows all week on all manner of interesting topics, so please listen in live or to the recordings, and I hope you will join me again next week at the same time. Bye for now.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.